Welcome everyone. I'm Susan Love from the ACCA Scotland team, and it's my pleasure today to welcome you to our event, Accounting for a Better World, which explores journeys to a career in accountancy, which we are really pleased to be bringing you as part of Scottish Careers Week. If you're unfamiliar with us, ACCA is the global professional body for accountancy, and we support those training and working in finance and accountancy both here in Scotland and in 178 countries around the world. Speaking of careers, if you're looking to get some tips about moving into employment or looking for your first or indeed your next role, ACCA is holding its UK Virtual Careers Fair this Thursday, the 10th of November, and there's still plenty of time to sign up and participate. You can connect with a wide range of employers and see lots of vacancies. And the sign-up details for the Virtual Careers Fair are in our resources section. So before I hand over to our host, just a little bit of housekeeping about today's session. First and most important, this is an opportunity for you to ask questions. Now you can do that by using the Q&A function down at the bottom of your screen. Now the questions will come up as anonymous, so don't worry if you're feeling shy. We will aim to get through all the questions today, but if there's something that you'd like to ask us that we don't manage to answer, any other queries for ACCA, then do just pop a question in and we can get back to you at a later date because all the questions are captured. You'll find a range of other resources in the tabs down at the bottom of your screen, including a help section if you're having any technical difficulties. And as I said, there's a link to resources that might be helpful, more information about some of the things that we've covered today. Today's session is also being recorded, so an on-demand version will be available within about 24 hours. Now, it's my great pleasure to hand over to our host, Lorna, who leads on early careers for ACCA, and she's going to chair today's panel discussion. Lorna.
Great, thank you very much, Susan. Hello everyone, really nice to be here. And as Susan mentioned, my name is Lorna Williamson. I am the Early Careers Manager for ACCA, and yeah, we're really pleased to be running this session as part of Scottish Careers Week. And yeah, we've got a really exciting panel of three accountants with us today, all at various stages of their careers and journeys with ACCA, with lots of kind of insights that they're willing and ready to share with us. So as Susan mentioned, please feel free to pop any questions into the Q&A chat. We'll try and get through as many as we can, and we'll save some time at the end as well to answer any questions if there are any. So without further ado, I will hand over to the panel to give us a brief introduction, if that's okay. So maybe just a bit of an intro into where you are on your ACCA journey, and your current role in accounting, and anything else that you'd like to add. So I'll just start with who I can see first on my screen, if that's all right. So Jess, are you able to start first with a brief introduction?
Sure. My name's Jess. I live in Edinburgh. I work with Steedman Chartered Accountants. I started my career just over 3 years ago in a big firm working in audit, and I came straight out of school, so I don't have a degree. And I now have 4 ACCA exams left. I work with Steedman, which is a much smaller firm, and I specialize in crypto accountancy. So a lot of data analytics work, a lot of like working with investors and startups in the crypto space, and helping them sort out their taxes and make sense of some of the regulatory issues in the crypto space.
Perfect, thank you so much. And Remy?
Hey, cheers, Lorna. So I'm Remy. I work for Santander UK. I'm on their finance grad scheme. I have got 2 exams left for ACCA. I went to GCU, graduated a couple of years ago, and since joining Santander, I've done stints in financial accounting as well as treasury, and am now in strategy and corporate development.
Perfect, thank you so much. And over to you, Jennifer.
Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer and I work as an audit officer in Audit Scotland. I'm currently studying towards my final ACCA exam. I started my career in a small accountancy practice, and from there I moved to work in financial services. and now I'm working in the public sector as an audit officer in Audit Scotland. I'm responsible for ensuring that public money is spent properly, efficiently and effectively. This is really important in the world that we're living in today, and I'm really grateful to be part of an organisation that are committed to improving the use of public money. I'm really excited to be part of the panel today and really looking forward to the session and any questions that anyone has. I'm looking forward to hearing those. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. And yeah, I think we're really lucky with the panel that we've got lined up. I think you've all got such kind of varying journeys into the profession and obviously roles as well that you're involved with. So hopefully we'll get some really useful insights. So I guess just to kind of kick things off and start the conversation, starting to think about your various journeys into accounting, a bit of a broad question, but what attracted you to the profession? Was accounting something that you all individually kind of always knew from a young age that you wanted to do? Was it something that you stumbled across? So yeah, what kind of made you think that accounting might be an industry or profession that you'd be keen to go into? And happy for anyone to start us off with answering that one.
I'm happy to jump in there. For me, it was very much something I stumbled into. I didn't really know much about accounting before I applied for my job. I always joke that I became an accountant and I didn't even know what a balance sheet was. Because I came straight out of school, I didn't do accounting in school or anything. I just knew that I wanted a good professional qualification and I didn't want to go to university. And I think qualifications like ACCA are so flexible and so valuable that it was great because I was able to jump straight out of school into work and know that I could get paid, study for exams and come out with a really internationally recognized qualification without having to necessarily sit in university for 3 or 4 years and do it that method. So for me, it was about the flexibility and just how many doors it opened, because if you're an accountant, like I now work in crypto, but if you're an accountant and you love sports, you can go work for a sport company, or if you love music, you can go work with a record label. And so there's just so many opportunities within accounting that it's a great career to start in if you want to go into business, but you're not really sure where.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And Jennifer or Remy, any kind of thoughts on how you decided to enter the profession?
Yeah, I guess similar to Jess, I kind of stumbled upon accounting, and I suppose there's a lot of opportunities in accountancy and finance, and accountants are always in demand. The roles are really broad and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to get into, so I like the idea of getting into a broad role rather than specialising very early in my career. And I always wanted to live and work in another country, and I knew with accountancy and finance I'd get that opportunity.
Absolutely, thank you.
And
Remy?
just to make it 3 out of 3, I also stumbled into accounting. It wasn't planned. At university, I did finance, investment and risk was my degree. So there was maybe a module, maybe 2 of accounting in that. And when I left and joined the grad scheme, most banking finance grad schemes would have you do an accountancy qualification as part of them, because it is, as Jess and Jennifer both said, fantastic base for many, many things, from banking to finance, to business, to whatever your passion may be. The great thing about accountancy is that almost everyone tends to use money, and money needs to be accounted for. So whatever your passion, whatever you like, accountancy is a great way to enter that profession, and it's a great backbone for any career path you want to take, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as you said, sort of 3 out of 3 in terms of sort of stumbling into it, and some really interesting points, I think, from all of you there, just about the kind of broadness and variety of roles that there are within accounting, that I think, there's lots of stereotypes that I think we've all had in our mind at some point about what a role in accounting looks like. But yeah, just the kind of vastness and the variedness of different sectors and that you can go into that have all been demonstrated there, as well as that piece that you mentioned, Jennifer, around kind of mobility, global mobility, and the kind of flexibility that the qualification gives you as well. So yeah, really, really interesting. Thank you. And I think you've kind of all touched on it either in that question there a little bit or when you did your introductions. But was there anything in particular for any of you and for anyone that wants to answer that has attracted you specifically to the sector that you're working in now? We've got a variety of sectors there, obviously crypto, we've got public sector and banking, so all quite different. Were they sectors that you kind of always thought that you were like keen to go into, or is that something that's kind of changed a little bit as well since starting out? And whoever wants to take that one, please go for it.
Yeah, I'll go first here since I went last time. So for me, banking, like I was saying, banking was something I kind of liked the idea of when I was in school, but never really pursued in great detail. Actually, my first pursuit after leaving school was actually biochemistry, so something entirely different. I ended up actually, like accountancy, falling into banking when I moved to Glasgow about 7 or 8 years ago. But ever since joining it, it's like accountancy in that it touches so many things. Everyone needs banking. So whether you're working in corporate banking, dealing with large multinationals, or retail banking, dealing with people, or like me, doing finance in the background, it's one of those sectors that touches everything and has the potential to not only help many, many people the world over, but also in doing so to affect actual change and can lead and direct businesses, in what they do. An example would be Santander has a large presence in renewables, which means that we can connect, say, renewable suppliers to companies that may need that kind of thing, and thus push sustainability and that better world we're looking for in that way.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And I think that's really interesting to hear, because I think sometimes as well we hear the word banking, and again, there's lots of assumptions, but so many opportunities, as you've just touched on there, to kind of make a really positive impact. So that's brilliant. Anyone else with anything to add before I move on? I can see a question that's come into the chat for Jess in just a second. But yeah, Jennifer, were you kind of always drawn to public sector? Or is that something that kind of came a bit later for you?
I guess it's something that came a bit later for me. To be honest, when I was working as a trainee accountant, I didn't even know what auditing was. But I remember getting some experience of it and being able to go out on client sites and engaging with them. And I guess I was looking for an opportunity in audit, and it didn't really come up until last year. And that's when I applied for the job that I'm currently working in today. And it's a really exciting role.
Brilliant, thank you. So a question's come in for Jess, actually, from Colin. Thank you very much, Colin. So who encouraged your particular route, Jess, that was kind of direct from school? Was it via a modern apprenticeship? Was the option lined up for you alongside college or university? So yeah, I guess just a question specifically for you, but also a bit kind of broader for all of you as well in terms of the qualification routes that you've taken and why you chose to take those pathways specifically, because we know there are quite a few different entry routes. But Jess, if we can start with you on that one, that'd be great.
Cool. Yeah, so it was actually, I worked backwards more than, it wasn't that I decided I wanted to do accounting and then figured out what route I was going to take. I was actually in 5th year at school, which for people who don't know the Scottish system is the second last year of school. But in Scotland, you can leave a year early if you want. So I was kind of just fed up with school. I wanted a job, but I wanted a good qualification. I had good grades. And so I basically just said, I'm going to go and I'm going to apply for some jobs with these accounting qualifications because they count as a degree. So I'll apply for these jobs. And if I don't get any of these jobs, then I'll go and do 6th year and then go to university after that. So I basically just went online and applied for some jobs. It was not well thought out, but it ended up being completely the right route for me because just to touch on the last question about going into crypto, again, my last job was like much more vague or much more like broad in that it was just traditional audit. And I kind of worked out that that wasn't for me because you can maybe tell by the blue hair, I'm not a very traditional accountant. I don't really like following last year's papers and following the rules. And so it was quite nice when this opportunity came up to get into the crypto space. Like, accountancy is so broad. Like, my job now, the rules are different every week. I'm talking to like some of the people that you never would think would have to engage with an accountant. Like, you're speaking to people who are like spiritual healers who trade crypto in their spare time, or like a random 16-year-old who's invested his parents' money and accidentally made £4 million. And so you just meet like the most crazy but brilliant people in accountancy, because it is generally quite a client-facing role. And so it's always good in accounting to find your little tribe and find your group, and then you can get on really well with them. And yeah, there's so many interesting people. I think that's something almost every accountant I've met has said, oh, one great thing about accounting is the people that you'll meet along the way.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I think you've segued us really nicely into what my next question was going to be, which is you mentioned kind of the blue hair and not being your traditional accountant. So I guess thinking about maybe what we all think of when we think of a traditional accountant and what images that might conjure up. Does anyone have any kind of sort of anything you thought you knew about accounting as a profession before you went into it that maybe isn't quite what you first perceived, or any kind of myths that you think are sort of still perhaps out there that you'd really like to take this opportunity to bust? Anything that's kind of changed in your perception since actually being in the profession yourself? To anyone who wants to answer that one.
I'd love to. There's one of my pet hates with like the kind of myths around accounting is that you have to be really, really good at maths. You have to have a very analytical brain. You need to be able to like visualize numbers and feel data, but you don't. I've never used trigonometry. I've never used differential equations in all the time I've been working in accounting. You need to be analytical, but that's not the same as being able to do like weird algebra or anything. You don't need to be a maths genius. You just need to understand business and understand how numbers are painting a picture of what's going on in the business. And so it's not just for maths people. We need all sorts of people, and we need people with all sorts of talents, whether it's English or music or whatever. The great thing about accounting is there really is a space for everyone.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Jennifer, were you about to share something with us as well there?
Yes, thanks, Lorna. I was just going to say that I guess I had the perception that accountants just sat in a room all day and didn't talk to anyone. I've heard that a lot kind of down through the years, but this is completely untrue from my experience. So in all the accountancy roles I've had, there's been so much engagement with clients and other audit firms, and especially with colleagues. And in my current role, there's loads of teamwork, which is really, really good. And that means that I'm constantly speaking to colleagues as well as engaging with officers in the public bodies that we audit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Remy, anything from you? Sorry, you're all a little bit small on my screen, so I'm sort of guessing who's got something to input. So do just interrupt me before I move on to the next question.
No, of course. I think one thing to point out is that I wouldn't say that I'm an accountant. You know, my job is primarily in finance and strategy, but I also have nearly, anyway, got an accountancy qualification, and I have my current job because of that qualification. So I think one myth to bust is that having an accountancy qualification like ACCA means you have to be, like, in quotes, accountant or auditor, whatever it may be, which isn't the case at all. It opens many more doors than traditional accountancy routes. Not to shield too hard for ACCA, but if you look at the website, for example, there's a section which looks at all the different career paths that are open to someone with a qualification from an accountancy body, and it's absolutely massive. Like, not many of them are actual financial accounting, which is what I think a lot of people are worried about. So yeah, it's fantastic for whatever you want to do.
Absolutely. And yeah, again, actually really glad that you mentioned that, Remy, because there's so many roles. You know, you might have an accounting qualification that has really supported, you know, the career or profession that you're in now. But exactly as you said, and I think we might have a link actually on the resources section of the platform. So you should be able to see a link to the Career Navigator there, which I think might be what you were just referring to. And it gives kind of a really good sort of demonstration of how an accounting qualification and the ACCA qualification specifically can really support various different professions. You know, lots of CEOs have accounting qualifications that have served them really well to get them to where they are. Entrepreneurs in strategy and finance, exactly as you've said. So no, I think that's a really good point. So thank you very much. And just thinking about that kind of qualification piece, I don't know, out of the three of you who kind of specifically chose ACCA or who might have been guided towards ACCA by your employer when you started out your studying. But I guess, what's your experience of studying the ACCA qualification specifically been so far? And if you've, has anyone actually got any advice for anyone thinking about starting their route to qualifying, that you would share with anyone thinking about which route to take?
Well, for my
and feel free to just jump in. Thank you.
Yeah, so we were given a choice of a few different accountancy bodies to study for, not to name too many names. Many people chose ACCA because, well, for a few reasons. One, it is very well respected and extremely global. So with an ACCA qualification, it's recognized worldwide, like absolutely worldwide. It seems very robust. The actual examining and qualification process, robust doesn't necessarily mean hard, but what it means is that once you've done it and people know you've done it, they know that you've got a certain baseline level of aptitude or intelligence, which wouldn't necessarily be as intrinsic in other qualifications. As well as that, it seemed kind of fun, to be honest. It wasn't too focused on any one particular area of accountancy, like management accounting, for example. There are MA modules in there, but it covers things from MA to FA, financial management, which is very strategy focused, which is why I'm doing it currently, AFM. Tax, audit, it's all in there. It's very broad and very interesting. And yeah, I'd recommend it to anyone personally.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, I chose it as well. So I had the choice between ICAS and ACCA. And I chose, as a school leaver, ACCA for me was a really good choice because there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how slow or fast you go with your exams. And my last firm, there were not very many school leavers, so they didn't really know how fast or slow I wanted to go. And so they had first put me on like a 6.5-year program to finish all my exams. But once I got started, I realized that actually I was quite confident with it and I felt comfortable doing it faster. And so because they have the sittings every 3 months, I just do one every 3 months. But if I get to a point where I feel like it's too much, then I take one out. Or if I want to do a bit more, then I add an extra one in. And that flexibility has been really, really helpful because rather than having to spend the 6.5 years, I'll be pretty much fully qualified after 4 years of working. So I'll be a chartered accountant at 21, which is absolutely fantastic because it means that I'm done with exams then and could just focus on my work.
Absolutely, yeah. Fully qualified by 21, very impressive. Thank you. So there was a question that I saw come into the Q&A as well, which was just generally, I guess, any kind of tips around how to prepare for exams. But do you have any kind of advice? Does anyone have any advice for the audience on how to prepare for exams? But I guess also that kind of work-life balance as well between, taking exams, studying alongside being in the workplace. And I guess attempting to keep a social life and look after your mental health and well-being all at the same time. So yeah, does anyone have any kind of tips for the audience thinking about that side of things?
I think as I've now done, I've done 9 exams, 9 ACCA exams. So I now feel like I'm pretty tried and tested with my methods. My biggest tip would be, don't think of them as hard, think of them as a lot, because you can always break it down. And actually, you can pass the exam as long as you do all the things you need to do to pass the exam. And for me personally, I prefer having 1 month before the exam where I actually don't drink. I don't really socialize that much. Like I'll go out for walks and stuff, but I just have a blanket ban on alcohol the month before my exam. And I just study like mad. And then after the exam, I'll socialize again for a couple of months and then go back into my study lockdown. But coming up with a method that works for you and coming up with a plan in terms of, for me, I like to use flashcards. So I say, okay, I know I need 1 week to like get the overview, read through the books, like understand the material. Then I need 2 weeks to do my flashcards. Then I need 2 weeks to do practice questions and come up with an outline of what you have to do. And then rather than thinking of the exam as just one big final event, think of the whole process, because the exam is just a reflection of what you've learned. The exam itself shouldn't be the stressful part of it. The stressful part of it should be learning everything. And by the time you get to the exam, you should understand what you're doing and just think of the exam as, this is to reflect all the hard work I've done, rather than I'm doing all this hard work just for the exam, because you're doing the hard work so that you know how to be an accountant. You're not doing the hard work so that you can pass an exam. And I think if you keep that perspective when you're studying, that's really, really helpful, and also much more motivational.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really positive way of thinking about taking exams. I love it. I don't think I've ever heard that approach before. But yeah, it's a reflective opportunity to kind of showcase everything that you've learned. I love that. Brilliant. Okay, so is there anything, kind of thinking about your individual sectors, is there a skill that you feel that you and your roles kind of use that's quite specific to your sector? That you think it'd be useful for the audience to be aware of? I guess kind of, I suppose a skill that you think is kind of key, I think you've touched on it already, Jess, when you mentioned being analytical. So I guess a skill that you think that you might use as an accountant or as a financial strategist, that would be really useful, that's actually different now you're in the role. And I guess, yeah, maybe sector specific as well. Hopefully that made sense, what I've just said, but I can repeat it if not.
Yeah, I might jump in there.
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry. So when I worked in the small accountancy firm, I used to use organizational skills mostly, because we used to work towards strict deadlines, and we would have to file, for example, corporation tax returns or income tax returns on a certain day. Whereas now I feel like in my audit officer role, I use more communication skills, because I'm constantly engaging with my team and engaging with public bodies to ensure that there's clarity and that we receive information in a timely manner. So I do think that there's always a change in the skills you're using depending on the role you're in accountancy and finance, and that just shows how broad accountancy and finance is.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jennifer. Remy?
So I was going to say there, as well as, I suppose, all the soft skills you can touch on, like communication, analytical skills, so on and so forth, just being really good with Excel is very handy as well. Even, I don't know, take an Excel course if you have to, or just mess around with it, with formulas and so on, but be good at that, my advice for you.
Yeah. And do you I feel like I should have done a disclaimer at the beginning of this panel. I'm not an accountant. So my question to you then is, obviously you mentioned having kind of solid Excel skills. Do you use Excel in your professions, in your roles, as much as you thought you would? Because I appreciate, obviously, things are becoming a lot more digital. There's probably a lot more software available to you all now than there maybe would have been even kind of 10, 15 years ago. So do you use it as much as you kind of, expected to, or is it a bit less, or is it different? You use it in a different way, or?
I, for one, use it more than expected.
Anyone?
It's the tool I use most in my day-to-day.
Okay.
Whether that's
I'm a massive Excel fan.
Yeah,
it's great. And I think that the other thing with Excel is that it's just problem solving, and Excel is just a tool for problem solving. but it's just such a good tool because it gives you a blank canvas and you can pretty much do anything on it. So I definitely would second that, like get your Excel skills up to scratch. And if nothing else, you'll make loads of friends in your new job, because if you know all of the little Excel tricks and you can fix everyone's spreadsheet, then you'll make loads of friends, because everyone will be, Jess, can you fix my spreadsheet? And yeah, no, it's great. Absolutely love Excel. Like the software is great, but like the fundamentals, you need to be good at Excel.
Okay, perfect, and great advice for making friends in your new workplace as well. I love it. So thinking about the kind of various skills that you've all sort of mentioned in the last few minutes, obviously we know, to get into any profession, if you've got work experience in that specific profession, then that's great, and obviously will be really helpful in terms of your understanding of the role itself. But we know that kind of work experience isn't necessarily something that's available to everyone. So is there anything that you could, I suppose, advise university students or the younger generation, people kind of thinking about getting into the profession? Is there a way that they can develop those skills, maybe not necessarily through work experience? So is there something that they could do maybe through volunteering or through a hobby or being part of a sports team? I think we've mentioned things like organizational skills, problem solving, being analytical, Excel. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything, even from your own experience, that you feel like actually maybe wasn't necessarily from work experience, but you feel like you maybe developed from something else that a young person could think about how they can kind of articulate that as a transferable skill when they're looking to get into the profession.
So I agree that it's really hard to get work experience, especially internships are super competitive these days. If you can get one, fantastic. It will put you in good stead for when you come to actually applying for grant schemes or whatever they may be for those assessment centres. But outside of that, things like joining a university club and say being their treasurer, it looks really, really good to employers because it shows that, one, you know how to talk to people and aren't a complete, recluse, which nothing wrong with being a recluse, but helps not to be in business. Two, it also shows that you are willing to put yourself out there and willing to take on tasks and responsibilities, and you are somewhat trustworthy. And three, it gives you experience of managing finances for more than just yourself. So that kind of stuff, absolutely. Volunteering too, a massive amount of volunteering can be done, even just raising money for charity. It gives you something to talk about in interviews. So you can bring it up when you ask those questions, like telling about a time that you showed resilience or something, whatever it may be. You can talk about that then. So yeah, both of them fully.
Great, thank you. Anything else for anyone else to add?
Yeah, I would definitely just
pretty much the same.
Like the internet is great. Like you can get anything you want on the internet. Do an Excel course, you can go online and you can do a coding course. And those kind of skills will always be wanted in accounting. If you can do basic coding and you can do basic Excel, and you can go on YouTube and watch videos on how to make financial models. Like there is so much information out there, and so much, like even if you just go on the ACCA website, the number of like really cool in-depth explainers and technical articles that they have about pretty much any subject that you want is amazing. So like take full advantage of the fact that we're now in an age where like there is more access to knowledge than ever, and definitely like get really passionate about things, learn as much as you can. Like I said, accounting in itself, like just the numbers doesn't really mean anything. The whole reason why it matters is that you're looking after someone's money and you're looking after someone's numbers. So get passionate about something, and then you can fit the accounting on top of that.
Perfect, thank you. And Jennifer?
I was just going to mention just any part-time job really would be really beneficial, even if it's not in accountancy and finance. For example, if you are in uni and you have a part-time job, you're going to learn how to prioritize tasks and just to manage your time as well, which is really important, especially if you're going to go in to a new role full-time and you're going to be studying part-time as well. It's really important to learn how to prioritize tasks and just to help you along the way. It's really, really beneficial.
Great, thank you. I think that's really reassuring to hear, because it sounds like kind of whatever you're doing, whether it's part-time job, volunteering, a hobby, there's lots of things that people are probably already doing that they don't realize that are kind of really transferable to a lot of the skills that have been mentioned, that they can talk about in an interview situation or in an application. So that's brilliant, thank you. And I guess kind of leading on from that, is there anything that you feel, and obviously you're all quite early on in your careers anyway, but thinking, obviously we've got Gen Z coming up, joining our profession very soon, and probably scarily not too far behind them will be Gen Alpha. Is there anything that you think that the kind of younger or even younger generation will be able to bring to the profession that kind of maybe is currently lacking, or we know is going to kind of be a real need in the next kind of 5 to 10 years? Thinking about obviously kind of digitization and sustainability and all of that kind of stuff. I guess if you could name one skill that you think they'll probably kind of have and be able to bring a lot of value to the profession. Is there anything you can think of?
Yeah, I think the younger professionals are generally more like open to trying new things. So as we look at like the changes in the profession, there's a massive emphasis on like data analytics. This is something that we currently learn about in our accountancy modules, but at the moment, accountancy firms are taking these skills that the younger professionals have, and I guess they're designing more efficient ways to work. So you're spending less time on some tasks and you can focus more time on more challenging roles. So definitely data analytics is something that is going to develop over time.
Yeah, great, thank you. And I think, Jess, you mentioned coding earlier. Is that something that you think is maybe a big one that the younger generation might be able to bring, just having grown up in, I suppose, a little bit more of a digital age than us?
Yeah, I mean, I am Gen Z, so because I'm 20 now, so I definitely think that one of the most important things is just the fact that when your clients start being Gen Z, then you want to have accountants who are Gen Z, because then you'll be able to provide a much better client service across generations, because fundamentally, if you're of that generation, you're going to understand your clients better. We have meetings sometimes, again, in crypto, there's a lot of really young clients who are similar age or younger than me. And so if we have a client who's maybe 18, 19, 20, even if it's one of my colleagues doing the meeting, I'll normally come into the meeting with them, just because it's even things like the terminology they use that they've got off the internet, or the way they talk about things. I'm almost able to translate between like accountant speak and like teenager speak. And so I think it's really important that we work across generations, because younger generations can learn so much from older generations and the skills that they've got, and the older generations can learn so much from the younger generations in terms of our like new perspectives and experience. So I think things like coding, I definitely agree with Jennifer on data analytics. That's a big one. And just generally being so online and understanding like the mindset of someone who spends that much time online, I think is really important. And the social side as well, I think it's really important to have a diverse workforce, because it helps you serve a diverse client base.
Perfect. Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. And I know obviously, please, sorry, go on.
I was going to just to finalise on that, it isn't necessarily Gen Z specific, but I mean, the reason that companies have grad schemes is that, and the reason I suppose that, organizations hire younger people, is that people who are generally younger do have more of a propensity to learn, it could be said. So if you would hire someone who was already well established in their career, they may not have, I suppose, the attitude to pick up things as easily or to take instruction. So the ability and willingness to learn, the attitude that comes with it, is, I think, one of the most important things to organizations, large organizations, who are hiring staff.
That's really interesting, and we haven't spoken about this, so you might just say no you don't, and that's fine. So I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, Remy. Hope you don't mind. But I don't know whether you get involved in Santander's kind of selection processes or early careers assessment processes at all. But if you do, or generally, you might kind of have a feeling for it anyway. But is that something that you feel like larger organisations are kind of testing for, not necessarily even within finance, but I guess just in general? Are they kind of testing for that kind of willingness to learn or kind of agility in terms of getting stuck into different things? Is that something that you've seen at all?
100%, yeah. So, of course, there's going to be internal criteria, which I imagine will be shared among many large organizations, and you'll have to have, I guess, the baseline level of aptitude or intelligence, you might want to call it, to kind of open that door in the first place. But when it comes down to who we're going to hire, the main thing is attitude. Do we see that person as someone who, one, can work well in the and in a team, and two, are willing to learn and pick up things and try new things in the business, wherever they may end up. So just to emphasize, attitude is the biggest thing we do look for in candidates. Yes.
That's really interesting to know, because obviously I asked you all about skills earlier, but I suppose I should have broadened it out to kind of skills and attributes, because that's a huge one for everyone to be aware of. So really useful. Thank you. And I know you kind of all mentioned earlier on that you sort of stumbled your way into either, your profession, your roles and accounting. But if we've spoken about the kind of vastness and broadness of the roles that are available within finance and accounting. If there, is a young person listening today that knows that they want to either become an accountant or go into a kind of finance-related role, but it's so broad and they kind of don't know how to go about picking which area they want to go into, or where they want to start, is there any advice that any of you would give to a young person on kind of where to focus or how to go about picking where to start their journey?
Yeah, I can go again, sure. One, internships, they're honestly an amazing tool. They are hard to get, but there are organisations in Scotland specifically that help with getting them. I'm not quite sure if any of you know what Saltire scholarships are, but basically they offer internships to Scottish penultimate year students at places around the world, literally global. I did one in California before my final year in finance. So internships, domestic, abroad, remote, whatever. Get one if you can, because that will let you know if you actually enjoy the sector, which is good to know before you join it full time. Secondly to that, speaking to people who actually work there already is really great. Like, get LinkedIn, just do it. And reach out to people in organizations that you find interesting who are maybe a bit junior, so where you'd be joining, and ask them what they think, because honestly, you'll usually get an honest response, whether they like it or not, which can also take your opinions. And the final thing to do is, I'm biased here, of course, but grad schemes that let you rotate around divisions are, I think, brilliant, because while you are treated as a team member, like a full employee, because you are, you know as well that if you don't enjoy it, in 6 months' time or a year's time, you'll be doing something else anyway. So you get a lot of different looks in different areas of a business without the lifelong, I guess, commitment weighing you down of having to actually work there if you don't like it that much. And you meet people as well. You meet people and build a good network. So
I would definitely add that I think flexibility is really important when you're looking for a job. Like, don't just decide I need to do like this one thing. Apply for varied jobs, go to interviews if you get them, because actually a lot of the time you'll pick up the vibes of the place in an interview, and you might apply for a job just to see what happens. Like, there's no harm in applying for it. Obviously apply for it properly, write a different cover letter for each job you're applying for, all the standard career tips, but just apply for jobs that sound interesting. Go to interviews if you get them, ask questions, because you're interviewing the employer as well as they're interviewing you. and find one that feels right, because a lot of the time it isn't always the job that you think you want that you actually want. One quite good example is that it doesn't matter whether you love tax. If you don't like working by yourself, you'll probably be happier in audit than tax. Because audit, there's a lot more teamwork. Tax, there's a lot more working by yourself. And so, yeah, apply for varied roles. Look into as many roles as you can. Like Remy was saying, like any job where you have a chance to try out lots of different things is always a good idea. But also remember that if you don't like your first try, you can always move, because as we were saying, there are so many transferable skills in accounting, and that everyone needs an accountant right now. So doing something is always better than doing nothing. So go for something, and then you can always guess, check, and improve if you don't like the first thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good piece of advice, isn't it? So almost like, you don't have to have the fear necessarily that just because you don't have a clear idea now, even if you pick something because you just have to pick something, you're not wedded to it forever. There's so much mobility within the profession and within different organisations, and so many of the skills are so transferable that just because you're doing it now or for the next couple of years doesn't mean that you're going to be doing it forever. So yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. Thank you. So I wanted to ask as well, and anyone who feels they might have something to share, thinking about our theme of today, accounting for a better world. Would any of you say that you feel like your roles or the profession or the accounting profession, do you feel like your roles kind of do contribute positively to the society that we live in? And I know, Jennifer, you mentioned something about that, and obviously working in the public sector earlier. But yeah, it'd just be great to hear from any of you that kind of feel like our profession is really contributing in a positive way to a better society.
Yeah, so working in the private sector audit, I guess we're helping to contribute to a better world by ensuring that public bodies are held accountable for how they spend taxpayers' money. And this ensures that the taxpayer gets the best value for money that's paid into the system. And this is really important, especially, trying to come out of the pandemic. There's a lot of issues with funding at the moment. And I guess it's really good to be part of an organisation that are committed to improving how public money is spent.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, I can go on this one as well. So again, I don't think I'm an accountant because I don't really do much accounting these days. But the skills that I've learned through ACCA and doing accounting-ish things that help me massively. So I work on several projects within the bank. Some of them, one I'm actually working on right now is looking at how we can reduce our customers' carbon footprint. So we're looking at tying it in with, say, our homes division, our car finance division, our retail banking division, and other initiatives too. And having the skills from ACCA and from being an accountant, whether those be those organizational skills or communication skills or just being really, really good with Excel, all of those things tie in really nicely and really well to those projects, which mean that, even if you aren't an accountant, having the skills ACCA and accountancy can give you means that you are in a position to better contribute to reaching that better world.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, I can add as well from my job, which again is quite different in a much smaller organization. I think one of the really satisfying parts of being in a small organization and working with individuals and small businesses is that you feel like you're making such a meaningful difference to these people's businesses and to these people's investments, because a lot of the time you'll have people coming in a total panic about their taxes. And pretty much without fail, the first thing I say in almost every meeting I have with a new client is, don't worry, we will sort it out. Because they'll come in, and especially with crypto, a lot of people didn't realize they had to pay taxes when they were trading their crypto. They've maybe been trading for 5 or 6 years. They come in, they don't have any records of any of the trades they've done, absolutely panicking, say, oh, I've read online that I can get a £3,000 fine for each year I didn't keep records of, and I can get this fine for being late, and I'll get this. And like the world's going to end, and you sit down with them and you say, look, the joy of crypto is that it's all on blockchains, which means it's all available somewhere. And you work with the client to get all their data together and figure out what's going on and get all their taxes sorted and submitted, and bring them all up to date. And the satisfaction of seeing them going from a complete mess of panicking about their taxes to actually just getting it all filed and under control and getting them back into just being a normal tax return client from a big project client is really, really satisfying. And yeah, no, that's definitely a fun part of the job, is feeling like you get to fix people's problems.
I love that. Yeah, I really like that. Don't worry, we will sort this out when you first meet with your clients. Well, I think we're probably coming up to the end. I've probably got time for one last question, but yeah, just to say, I think it's been really, really eye-opening, certainly for me, and just hearing about, just such the broadness of accounting and finance roles, the opportunities that are out there, the different, hearing about all the different skills that are used in the profession, but also, depending on sector, and also, finishing off on a really nice note there in terms of kind of how you feel that your roles are either helping the public or businesses and your clients, is really, really nice and eye-opening, as I said. So I think I'll ask you one more question to finish off on, if that's all right. And that question will just be, for all of you, thinking back to the beginning stages of your career, which might not feel like that long ago, maybe not even the beginning of your career, but when you first started thinking about your career choices and kind of starting to make those decisions in terms of either subject studying or looking at grad schemes or school leaver programs, is there one piece of advice that you would go back and give your younger self when kind of thinking about next steps in your career? Is there anything that you would go back and tell yourself to do something differently, or just reassure yourself on? So yeah, opening that out to whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I guess just to believe in yourself and believe that everything will work out in the end. It really isn't easy to balance work and study and just life in general, especially after uni, because I feel like some people really change during that period of time. But it's all about managing that change and just believing that these short-term sacrifices will lead to long-term success.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Jennifer.
I'm going to be greedy and give two pieces. So first of all, this short one is, don't be scared of getting things wrong. If you try and you don't get it right the first time, you learn from it and you learn next time. It's as simple as that. There's no downside to it, really. The second piece is, don't be scared of being told no. So what I mean by that is, if you want something from someone, you can just ask them for it. And the absolute worst that you'll get is a no. But if you consider you already had a no before you asked them, if you don't ask them, the answer is no by default. So ask them. You might get told no, but you're where you were when you started, and you never know, it might be a yes, and you might get what you want.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. So many positive outlooks on today's panel. I love it. Thank you. Jess, anything that you would want to finish on in terms of advice to your younger self?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably just add leap before you look. Sometimes that's the best way around to do it, because actually you probably have no idea where you're landing, no matter how much looking you do. So sometimes the best thing to do is just to go for it. And I know that a lot of people wanting to be accountants, and accountants in general, tend to be pretty analytical people who like the nitty gritty, but sometimes you just have to just go for it and figure out the nitty gritty later, because things tend to have a way to work themselves out, and you can always sort the details later.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's a really nice way to close off the discussion. So I just want to finish by saying a huge thank you to all three of you, Jess, Jennifer, Remy, for sharing, your experiences, all your insights. I think, I've definitely learned a lot. I'm sure everyone listening has as well. So just, huge thank you for giving up your time during Scottish Careers Week for us. And for everyone who is watching, Just want to share with you all that we do have on Thursday the ACCA Virtual Careers Fair. So if you've liked what you've heard, some of the messages that you've heard from the panel today, or you're just interested in learning a bit more about the profession, about ACCA, or looking at job vacancies that are available out there, on Thursday this week, we have got the Virtual Careers Fair where we'll be joined by hundreds of employers recruiting for various vacancies, and there's lots of kind of employability content and resources on there available for you as well. So you should be able to see the link on your screen there. And I think the Careers Fair is from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. So you've got all day to just pop on and come and have a look at the employers that are exhibiting and the opportunities that are available for you there. So we hope to see lots of you there. And just a huge thank you once again to our panelists. Thank you to everyone for joining, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.